officially signed. So that had been in the works. That's Creighton's portal haul now. So I don't know quite where Nebraska stands, but the Jays only have 3 spots left to fill. Um, what's Nebraska working with, Wilson?
Nebraska, let's see, they had seven leaving, plus two more out of the portal, and now five coming in. So that is a net of four
Okay.
that they still have to fill. But th things get a little weirder when you think about the uncertainty and like the roster limits being capped at 15 now.
Yeah.
So it's not entirely clear to me how much further Nebraska has to go because frankly, I think at this point, if you're trying to get another like veteran, if Nebraska's trying to get another veteran guy, that's a pretty tough sell at this point because there are only so many minutes to go around, and with the guy,
Yeah.
Nebraska brought in some guys who you are going to figure are going to play some pretty heavy minutes. Bryce Sanford, Jamarcus Lawrence, Kendall Blue, like those guys came in to be. Those are veteran guys. Two are seniors, one is a junior. Those are guys who came in to be contributors
Yeah.
right away. So I think it's going to be tough at this point to add too much to that just because with those guys and the guys that are sticking around and guys like Braden Frager who seem poised to step into the rotation, there are only so many minutes to go around. There's going to be someone, among this group who in the vein of, Boogie Pullman and Gavin Griffiths gets left behind in about December. Like that's just how it's gone the past few years. Teams generally don't
Yeah.
play 10, 11 guys. So I
No, no, they don't.
so I wouldn't be surprised. I think, and this is just speculation, but I think were Nebraska to add someone else, or add more guys this cycle, it would be more likely to be like a younger, kind of multi-year project type guy versus a Kendall Blue or a Jamarcus Lawrence or an Ugnis Jurasevicius, who will only be there for a year or two. But yeah, I think um, yeah, just the direction Nebraska's going. I don't think they have a whole lot of like minutes left over at this point.
No. And that's the tough thing because like I saw him in person and everyone knew. But like a team like Auburn, regarded as one of the best teams in the country, was one of the best teams in the country all season. Like they play they play 8 deep.
Yeah.
And the special thing, and it's like a solid, I mean like a solid 8 deep. Like the ninth guy at Auburn would start a lot of places. Um, how do you get a guy to do that? That's the thing. That's
Yeah.
the question that in this day and age is becoming harder and harder to answer. How do you get a guy to come be the 13th person on the roster, to come be the 14th, 15th guy on the roster? And I understand when you're added, it doesn't mean much, but like these kids are aware. They're well aware that, like you said, there are only so many minutes to go around. There are so many there's only so much food on the table and so many mouths to feed. Like they all understand this. But from what it sounds like, you don't think they try to get to 15, or you do? What do you think?
Well, they had 17 or 18, and then the net four that puts them at 12 or 13 right now,
Okay.
somewhere in there. So they're getting close to it. And
Okay.
who knows? It doesn't sound like anyone else is leaving through the portal. We talked to Fred Hoiberg today, and we got every indication that like Berke Buchtengel and Braden Frager are coming back. He mentioned both of them, specifically as like guys they're going to be looking to next season who have big off seasons in front of them. So yeah, I don't know. This portal season has been so weird, just how like fast and furious it's come in.
I know, man.
Yeah, I
Like
did see there's a report out there. They've got like a Zoom with someone, so they're not done. I know that they have like other Zoom calls set up. Like they are still wheeling and dealing. I'm just saying, I'm not saying this like from a reporting perspective. I'm saying this just from like in my mind and what makes sense. I just think that would be a tough sell on someone to
yeah.
like who else, the rotation can only be so much. And to your point about, are guys going to buy into like being patient? I think kind of underscored by how hard it is to be a freshman these days. Like who knows? Because you're kind of getting into this, hypotheticals here. But 5 years
Sure,
ago, you know, 5 years ago, would Braden Frager, Nick Janowski, and Justin Bullis have played this year? I mean, maybe, but
maybe.
but like they were on a team that was like full of juniors and seniors who had transferred in from elsewhere. It makes it a lot harder. I think it really um, requires a certain level of patience. And, we saw Nebraska isn't going to be able to reap the benefits of whatever development Nick Janowski got this year.
Yeah, that's the tough part. Um, that's the balancing act. Like I wouldn't want to do it, you know. Like I know that I'm going to show up in a week or so, and Wilson Moore's going to be my podcast partner. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to spend
Okay,
all of
just
that time developing a guy and then him go do another podcast.
yeah. I thought you were gonna go the other way. I thought you were gonna say I wouldn't want to show up, then I have to sit there and watch someone else do the podcast for a year, and when he leaves, then it's
Yeah, why would I want to do that? No, so it's just tough. I think Creighton tries to get to 15. They're in on a couple more guys too. If you're a Creighton fan, I'll tell you a couple of names to watch are Corey Washington from Wichita State. I think that one's pretty out there. They're in on Austin Swartz, the guard from Miami. And they're also in on Dan Skillings Jr. from Cincinnati. I think he's probably the least likely of the three, but they've expressed interest. Um, here's the thing with these guys, Wilson, 6'5", 190, 6'4", 200, 6'6", 210. They're trying to get another guy to play the 2/3. Like that is very apparent. Um, so it looks like they're going to go try and get that. Maybe go try and get a backup big. If you don't think Alexa, a 7-foot center, is going to be ready, he's talented. He's a little raw, but he's really talented. Does he need to redshirt? Well, if so, maybe you go get a backup big as well and carry three centers on the roster. I don't know. Um, but we'll find out. I think sooner than later. Uh, because the fact of the matter is, you mentioned how quick these teams have moved. It's April 9th when we're recording this. The transfer portal doesn't close until April 22nd. And again, Creighton only has three spots left, and Nebraska only has three or four spots left. So, like, these teams moved very, very quickly. Um, so I don't know. Maybe Greg McDermott and Fred Hoiberg wanted to get out and golf a bit this summer.
yeah, it's we've got the first nice day here in a while.
Yeah.
If Yeah, I would go for a bike ride, but I'd be terrified something would like gonna happen when I'm 20 miles away from my apartment. Uh,
Yeah,
but
that's like I remember when Woj retired. Not that we are on that scale, okay, you know. But I remember when Woj retired, Schefter got on and said, whatever. Now he can, he'd be in the shower and would have to
yeah,
check his phone. Like that's real. You know what I mean? That's like a story behind a story is like where we've been or what we've been doing when news has broken.
yeah. I mean, I think we and like anyone else in our profession has stories of
Yeah.
like being in the most inconvenient situation possible when news came out, and we had to drop everything and work on it.
Yeah. No, that's never happened to you, has it? No,
Definitely
no
never happened
way.
to me before. I
In the
definitely
middle of
never had to write a story about Quentin Rhymes committing on my phone at a restaurant. That didn't happen.
in the middle of
But
a Vikings game.
in the middle of a Vikings game that they won, thank you very much. But
So no, man, it's just it's nuts. All that to say, this time of year is nuts. It's nuts. It's nuts. For really kind of everyone involved. So we'll see how the rest of the offseason plays out.
yeah,
Um,
quick exercise that's just running through my mind.
Please.
Just as it stands right now, right now we don't know what the future holds. But what does Creighton's 8 or 9 man rotation look like right now?
I think your starting five right now, is Graves, Dix, Green, McAndrew, Freeman. Um, behind behind Graves is going to be Ty Davis. Um, that will one supplement Dix and two develop Ty Davis before he has an opportunity to really take the reins next season when he's a junior, 2 seasons from now, I guess. Um, and then Hudson Greer is going to be in there as well. Consensus top 50 commit from Montverde. We saw over the past few years and really over the last decade how good those Montverde kids are. So I think he, like Jackson, i this past season is going to try and maybe will make contributions early. So he'll be at like the 2/3 behind Dix. And their games are somewhat similar. So that'll be a really good learning opportunity um, for Hudson Greer, regardless of what his minutes look like. Um, so there's what? There's seven, right? Um, you have Isaac Trout on the wings, obviously, and and then Fedor Zugic is in there too. I forgot Fedor. He could play the one or two or whatever. So there's your eight. Um, that's probably the eight. I I think I think Isaac Trout, as the roster stands, I think Isaac Trout's going to play a little bit of the five next year, because it seems like they've kind of approached this saying, well, we know we're not going to have 7'1" man in the middle anymore, um, so we're going to look drastically different, right? And it seems like they're going to get back to that kind of true small ball, let it fly. We want to run and gun and this, that, and the other. And if that's the case, yeah, it would make sense for Isaac Trout to play a little bit of a small ball five because he did that 2 years ago, in the in his first season at Creighton when Fred King's knees bothered him and he struggled. Isaac Trout slid over and played the small ball five when Ryan Kalkbrenner needed a break. What would that look like for Nebraska at this juncture?
So at the moment, I believe it would be Jamarcus Lawrence at the one,
Okay.
either Kendall Blue or Connor Esigian at the two, Price Sanford at the three, Berke Buchtengel and Rink Mast down low. And then from there, your bench is whatever one of a Siegen or Blue isn't in the starting lineup. Oogie, um, Sam Sam Hoiberg,
Okay.
and then some competition for minutes. Will Cooper, Cale Jacobson might be the second unit point guard at this point, and Braden Frager. Forgot about Braden Frager. Um,
Yeah.
he'll compete for minutes too. I think Fred Hoiberg and the coaching staff are pretty happy with the development he made redshirting
Yeah.
this year. I think he and Justin Bolus, there's a lot. I think there's a lot of minutes to be determined in that second unit. I'll put it that way. It's guys going for positions that there aren't quite as many spots as there are guys, but that will shake out as it will in the fall. But
Yeah.
I think we generally know who the top like 6 or 7 on this team is.
I think so too. I think so too. Speaking of things that will kind of reveal themselves in the fall, uh, it'll be a new era of Creighton volleyball.
It will.
Uh, because in a Sunday night stunner is what I've called it.
Good one.
Uh, Creighton volleyball coach Kirsten Bernthal Booth said she was resigning. I believe her actual last day is Wednesday, April 9th, while the day we're recording this. But Sunday night they announced that she was resigning to pursue opportunities outside of coaching and that Brian Rosen, an assistant on her staff the past 3 years, was being promoted as her successor. And we won't spend too much time on this, but there's been a lot of smoke, a lot of back and forth, a lot of discourse surrounding the issue. So I just kind of felt obliged to give my 2 cents that nobody asked for.
By all
Uh,
means.
so I think the best way to do that is to give a brief rundown on how all of this played out, because that is kind of the uncertainty around the whole situation. Is why now and why this and why that. Um, you'd have to go back to December. And again, I'm going to try and not meander too much, but it's an interestingly intricate situation. Brian Rosen had been named 2024 Assistant Coach of the Year by the AVCA. So, like, we're talking about the top assistant in the country coming from Creighton. And he started to get job offers, as you can imagine, and he turns them down. He wants to stay at Creighton. He wants to stay at Creighton. So he turns them down. He turns them down. And then around that same time, Kirsten Bernthal Booth had heard from a couple of the League One volleyball teams. Um, and she's always been intrigued by the administrative side of things, wants to help grow the game. She's the AVCA president. So, like, very interested in the admin side. Um, but it wasn't serious. Well, then those conversations picked up, and it was like, oh, okay, maybe this is an option. And throughout this whole process, I want to make it very clear that I talked to Booth, Rosen, and Marcus Blossom on Monday, and they were all three very adamant that those three were in the know on what was going on here. So it's not like this blindsided anybody in the department. Like those three, the people who needed to know were in the know. And then Brian Rosen's alma mater comes calling and says, "Hey, we want to offer you the job." Really hard to turn down home. You know what I mean? And he does. Like he was in the acceptance stage, not that he had accepted, but like they had offered him the job and he turned it down, not knowing what was going to really happen at Creighton. He knew it was a possibility that Booth would leave, but he wasn't really sure. What he did know is that he wanted to be at Creighton that badly. And so he turns it down. And it seemed like at that juncture, Booth said, okay, well, if you were, loyal enough to me in this program to turn down your alma mater to show that you really want to stay here, maybe it's time, since I have this opportunity on the table and since I turned 50 and since I have a daughter playing college volleyball, maybe it's time I take on a new challenge since I would be leaving the program in good hands and for somebody who wants to be here. And all of that came to a head in the 12 days before the Sunday's announcement. There's been a lot of animosity that this person did this and left for this reason and pushed whoever out. Like Kirsten Bernthal Booth said Monday, she is not running from anything. She isn't sick. She wasn't forced out. And, sure, it's fair to be skeptical and think, oh, well, she's at a press conference in front of all these cameras in a room full of people. Like, of course she said that. She was adamant about that when I talked to her after. She's not running from anything. So yeah, I just know there's been a lot of discourse surrounding that for one reason or another. And I again just felt obliged to kind of put out there um how that all played out because a lot of people were one curious and two especially curious after some of the stuff that followed. So nuts though, Wilson, right? I mean, just absolutely nuts.
Yeah, it certainly seemed to come out of nowhere. I mean, I don't, I'm not, I don't exactly have my finger on the pulse of Creighton volleyball, but I saw
Sure.
that and I was like, oh, what? Like that? Didn't know that was a thing that could happen.
So here's another look behind the scenes. I had just gotten home from the Creighton baseball game on Sunday. Before the Creighton baseball game, as I was about to leave my house, um, Alexa Dimitrievich committed. I believe that was then. Maybe I'm wrong. I can't remember. No, that was Monday. So sorry. So sorry.
It all
Um,
runs together.
dude, I'm telling you. So no, I go to the Creighton baseball game. Um, Sunday, get home. It was a long game at that. It was like a 3.5 hour baseball game, which where are the pace of play rules? I don't know. Long baseball game, right? Get home, and I get the press release that they're holding a press conference Monday morning, some 14, 15 hours later, to announce that Booth is resigning officially and that they're officially promoting Brian Rosen. And I didn't believe it. Like I sat and stared at my phone for like a minute, and I texted some people at Creighton and just said, like, there's no way I'm reading this right. Correct? Like there's no way. And they were like, no, that's yeah, you are. I was like, okay. So when I say a stunner, I mean like utterly shocking that all of this kind of transpired. But now you and anyone who listens to this podcast knows how it all transpired.
Yeah.
So you're welcome, I guess. Well, you got anything else, Wilson?
I don't think so. It's just, when does next season start?
It at the same time, it can't get here soon enough. And it will be. It will be here soon enough,
Yeah.
as we know. And we'll just keep plugging away until then.
Yeah. That we will.
That's going to do it for this week's episode of Half Court Press. Thanks for hanging along with us. It's been an interesting couple of weeks now that both of these teams' season are officially over, and I'm sure that it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks moving forward before we talk to you guys next time. But that's going to do it. If you want to follow all of Wilson's stuff, go over to omaha.com. If you want to read all of mine, go over to omaha.com. If you want to be literate and informed, go over to omaha.com because that's the place to be. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Half Court Press. We'll talk to you guys next time. See ya.